afternoon. I call to order our February 22nd Transit and Transportation meeting. Councilwoman Jane Harris is excused. She's unable to make it today. Also, I want to set expectations for today's meeting. The actual public hearing for this is not until Tuesday, March the 5th. So we will listen today, but there will not be any recommendations coming out of here because we have to have the public hearing first. Today's session is a chance for us maybe to come out of this meeting where you all can find some wins and things that you can negotiate in preparation for that meeting as we go forward. I know this has been first open last spring. I know Councilwoman Jones, they reached out to you and you've had many meetings. And I've been on some Zoom calls with a couple of you on this as well. So what we're gonna do is get a presentation from staff. After that, how many people are here to speak in opposition? I got 1, 2. That really want to speak, plan on saying something. Can you raise your hand and raise your hand high? 2, I see a hand in the back. So just 2. How many are here to speak in support? Okay, the client. So with that said, we'll see how the presentation goes, see where we are, and then we'll go from there on time. Because it's not a public hearing, I get to kind of set the time, so we'll see. So staff presentation will go first.
Right, good afternoon. Hannah Reckow, Planning and Development. So this item is, This item is Z2823 on 3725 Hardin Road, about 7 acres, currently zoned R4 and requested to be rezoned to neighborhood mixed use, 7 stories, parking limited, conditional use. The Planning Commission recommended approval. That vote was 6-1. Apologize for the typo there. And as was mentioned, the public hearing has not been opened yet. It is scheduled for March 5th. So I'll provide just a really high-level overview of the request, and then I'm going to hand it off to Margaret Tartalla from Transportation to provide some other information. So we'll situate ourselves. The site is in West Raleigh at the corner of Blue Ridge Road and Hardin Road, north of Wade Avenue, north of the Art Museum. See that there are a handful of houses currently on the site and got frontage on both Blue Ridge Road and Hardin Road. It is a conditional use request, so there's currently 5 zoning conditions proposed. These prohibit some uses, prohibit drive-through facilities, set a maximum cap on residential dwelling units and total commercial use on the site, and then commit to additional stormier events for stormwater management beyond the UDO requirements. And then the last condition is pertaining to a signal. So essentially, they're committing to perform a signal warrant for the Blue Ridge Road, Hardin Road intersection and install that signal if it's warranted at that time. And if it isn't, they would commit to redoing that analysis 180 days after the issuance of a final certificate of occupancy. The shift here from a residential district to a mixed-use district, we have an increase in building height, so increase across the board in entitlement. The zoning conditions are what are controlling the maximum number of units and maximum commercial entitlement of 20,000 square feet. Request is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall. It is inconsistent with the future land use map designation and consistent with the urban form designations on the site. And I will hand it off to Margaret Tartalla now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Margaret Tartalla with Transportation. I'm going to touch high level on some things that have come up, transportation specific to this case, through the process so far, and I also have several colleagues here to answer any additional questions you might have. So the first thing I'm going to touch on, because it's related to condition number 6 about the traffic signal, is the TIA that was done. So there was a study done, and essentially the recommendations for that are these 2 bullets here on the screen. The first is to monitor the intersection at Blue Ridge and Hardin Road. There will be another TIA that's done during site review that is more specific to the actual development. So what is actually going to be built? The rezoning TIA looks more at what maximum could be built versus actual. The other thing that came up was traffic calming on Hardin Road. So this predates the rezoning case, but Hardin Road is part of our neighborhood traffic management program's traffic calming process already. A evaluation was originally done in October of 2022 and just reevaluated this past month in January 2024. So this map is showing the rezoning site in yellow. And then, so all of Hardin Road, that red parcel on the corner of Nancy Ann Drive and Hardin Road is a fire station. And so our traffic management program has had conversations with the fire station about traffic calming in this area. They would not support traffic calming between Blue Ridge Road and Nancy Ann Drive because the traffic station and the importance of being able to get on-time emergency response. So that blue section is part of our traffic calming project prioritization already. Here are some of the statistics behind that. So right now it's number 32 on the priority list. The difference between the October 2022 evaluation and the January 2024 evaluation was very small. The speeds and the volumes on the road basically the same. So that prioritization did not change. So with traffic calming through that program, we would estimate that a project would be delivered in the first half of 2027. We've had some conversations with the developer on what it would look like if there was a project delivered through a condition, and they can speak to that, but it seems like it would be very similar timeline-wise. So we wanted to highlight that. And I think that's most of what I have. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
I have a couple questions, but Councilwoman Jones.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I want to go back to the TIA.
Sure.
And this is might just be my not understanding of it, but when we talk about numbers, how close were we to it? Like, I never see what would have triggered, like how many trips per day would have triggered that, and then how close they were to it. Do you have that?
So there are several different warrants for a signal installation. So there's like, I'll have to defer to my colleague Monique because she reviewed the TIA, but essentially it's not one number that would trigger a traffic installation. There are several different warrants that are looked at, and that could be turning movements, through movements.
Line of sight. I know that's one because we dealt with it on Creedmoor.
Good afternoon, Jed Niffenegger, Transportation. I spoke to the division and regional traffic engineer for NCDOT this morning. Blue Ridge Road does fall on their state system. It's not on ours, although Hardin is on our network. NCDOT does not consider signalization with rezoning. They, because as Margaret alluded to, that shows worst case scenario. They generally consider signalization or looking at it when the site plan is developed and the actual trips that development will produce are more transcribed or accurate. So DOT's approach would be when the site plan comes through, they would be happy to review the TIA at that point and see if a signal warrant was triggered at that point. I don't know if that helps answer your question, because right now, no warrants are met at current conditions.
Right, and I can sorry, I'm really loud. I can offline, try and again better understand what the warrants are, and I understand they change, and it's a case by case thing. I totally get that, but I'm just trying to understand. So when we the entitlement right now would change if approved to 415. If they don't build to 415, if that doesn't happen, because that doesn't happen a lot, we don't build to what's entitled, then and they're not able to meet that, how is that still a condition? So I guess I'm just trying to think if all of these work out, I get that they're trying to say, hey, we're going to make it, and if it's warranted, we want to build it, and that's appreciated 100%. But I just want to, I guess I'm trying to figure out the actualities of that happening, especially since we're not warranted right now. Will this development, if it's built to 415 units, which best case scenario it is, will it meet it at that point?
I asked DOT if, because ultimately it's their call, in knowing what DOT generally looks for signal warrant, the warrants to be met to trigger a signal, I don't think it would be warrant a signal. That being said, the development's a long time, could be a long time out. There's a lot of things that could occur between now and then. There could be a crash pattern that appears that would be mitigated with signalization. So it's kind of hard to answer that because there's so many moving pieces.
So what I'm hearing, and make sure that I just want to capture what you're saying, is that there are things outside of just the 415 units that would be created, that
Correct.
there's other factors of development that's going to happen between now and whenever it's built that could hopefully result in a warrant to be able to utilize that condition, but it just can't be guaranteed.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Milton, you have any questions? All right, so I've one goes back to the warrant, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding the condition. The way I understand this condition to read is that a warrant, I guess a study was done prior to. If it doesn't meet warrants, then they would do another study post-construction, and then once that will determine if it meets warrants or not. Is that my understanding? And the pre-test is after site plan, and you know how many units are going to be built. Is that my understanding?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. My other question then goes to Hardin Road and the time frame for traffic calming. Under the city plan, we're saying around 2027. And from my understanding, we don't have a policy that allows, I call it skip the line, where a development can come in and pay for a traffic calming project ahead of others, or what? I just want to get a better understanding.
Sure, I'll hand it over to Will Shoemaker, who's in charge of that program.
Will Shoemaker, Mobility Development Supervisor for the Transportation Department. So first off, you had a two-part question, and I've already kind of forgot the first one, but absolutely you're correct that as it exists today and how this site is set up, the policy that is written does not allow for traffic calming to be offered in this situation. Historically, we've said no to private development doing any traffic calming. We did some research and brought to you in 2020, 2021, and we updated the policy to now allow it, but it's very specific in the situations that it's going to be brand new subdivisions where they're building new streets, or a wholesale redevelopment of a street. So it's effectively a new street, and it's completely new residents. And then we have never explicitly allowed traffic calming through zoning conditions currently.
Okay. And the first part of my question was about the time frame of, I guess, based on, I know we average about 10 to 12. It's a summer.
Yeah. So they are currently ranked 32nd. We offer up to 20 projects a year. We have about a 70% approval rating, so that's about that number that you're getting. We actually get on the ground. So if all projections hold, it would be, we would come to you probably late 25, early 26 with Hardin Road on that top 20, would request authorization. We would engage with the neighborhood throughout 2026 with an expectation of construction, with the goal of constructing the first half of 2027. One little kind of caveat and asterisk to that is that the traffic calming list is dynamic. So as we get new requests, it is not a first come, first serve process. It is a worst come, first serve process. So if we get an influx of streets that rank higher and have a greater quantifiable need, that could change their ranking or their priority, so it could be pushed out. But as it exists today at 32nd, we would likely look at a 2026 offering with a 2027 construction if approved by the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Milton.
I had a follow-up question about allowing rezoning cases or private development to engage in the traffic calming for us. I don't remember that policy switch or the reasoning behind it. I'm just curious why, if we have a project developer who's willing to pay for improvements that we have in the queue, why we would not actually encourage that in a way.
Absolutely, and so a brief history, it was originally explicitly excluded because of equity concerns. We didn't want a booming North Raleigh at the time to continually get this traffic calming where South and Southeast Raleigh or an underserved neighborhood or areas of the city was not getting traffic calming. So the thought process was, we're just gonna have all traffic calming through this one city-initiated program. After about a decade of data, we found that it was actually creating inequitable outcomes because instead of being able to focus on the existing network, private development was putting more streets on the ground than we could treat in a year. So that was just effectively adding more streets and diluting the list. So those that had existing problems were sometimes waiting longer and longer times. So after we got that data in our belt and did that analysis, we realized that something that had the best intentions did not shake out that way. So when we came to you a couple years ago, we took away that explicit restriction to allow new development to do that. And that's the brief history, but speaking more to rezonings, where it gets extremely complicated is that traffic calming in Raleigh is an opt-in process, so it requires neighborhood approval. So with the development team, they have shown interest in offering a condition to go ahead and do that, but we don't know how that would look like from council direction, because would this be a mandate, this be neighborhood engagement? We don't know if the neighborhood actually wants this. Again, we have about a historically 70 to 75% approval rating. Looking at District East specifically, we only have a 45% approval rating for past traffic calming projects. So again, it feels like it could be a very straightforward thing, but looking at the neighborhood choice makes it very complicated, and we would absolutely need additional council direction if you would like to pursue changing policy. It's just very complicated, and we haven't been able to do that in the past.
Okay, well, that may be something that we can discuss coming out of this committee. So I have a follow-up on that. And I don't mean to argue with you, I'm just talking policy. In my opinion, for the equity concerns is if in the areas where there is a lot of private development, if they're willing, because we can't mandate anything, if they're willing to condition the roadway improvements and pay for it, that would free up public money to be focused maybe in the areas where there's not a lot of private development that we have some equity concerns. I think in a way it helps us shift our city resources to the areas that need it most. And then the second piece of that has slipped my mind. It was something about the conditioning of it and whether the neighborhood really wants it. When we do regular traffic calming, you have to do this ballot process and go around and get a certain opt-in. But for the rezonings, they have to do 2 neighborhood meetings and they have to mail to way more folks than are even required under state law, under our Raleigh code, including renters. And so I can't even think of a better way to get engagement on traffic calming than if it did come through the rezoning process, because everyone's going to get notice of the rezoning and arguably could even come to the public hearing and speak on the conditions. And so I would like to see us possibly discuss changes to that prohibition, because I think if we've got a private developer that's when they hear neighborhood concerns and about traffic calming or stoplights, and they say, well, we'll do it as part of our project, we should be willing to accept it. I mean, we do an adopt a shelter program for bus stops. I mean, I kind of see it being similar.
Well, I want to just jump in really quickly on that. I'm sorry.
Real quick. I acknowledge what you're saying. That's something that we will definitely handle and address, I think, later, because I have some issues there just based on the way our program is. We've had residents that have come in, say we want it. They start going through the process. then they come back, and based on our voting of those immediate and then those secondary streets, it's kind of different. But that's another conversation, not for this one today. Go ahead, Councilor.
I'm sorry, my fault. What I wanted to touch on, and just for clarification from staff, from my understanding, it's not just about the funding of it. It's about the fact that the city has to do it. So they're not saying, oh, developers, you go build the traffic calming, and that has to do with regulations and making sure that it's consistent throughout the city. So even if a developer were to be able to pay for it, then we still have to have the city do it. So that's where the equity comes into, to being able to prioritize different, these developments over those that are already scheduled. So I think it's twofold. It's both money, but then actual man hours to put it in place, because we wouldn't allow any third party to come in and actually build the traffic calming. So I think it's two parts to that we'd have to look at if we're discussing.
Definitely. So I'm going to bring it back to this case. I want to give it 10 minutes per side. And we're going to start with the applicant first on this case. I do want to point out, there is part of this, I know they came up around stormwater. This is traffic, transportation, so we're focusing mainly on that point. Once we're done here, I will ask a question about stormwater, since we do have staff here, but I do want to just help level set so everyone knows why the stormwater piece isn't mainly our main focus here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Jamie Schwedler with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street, here on behalf of Toll Brothers Apartment Living. We will summarize a little bit about why. There you go, it's going. We'll summarize a little bit why the conditions are the way they are and how we got here today. And part of that story is why Toll Brothers selected this site in the first place, to bring a new mixed-use development along Blue Ridge corridor in the area where your comprehensive plan wants more housing, it wants to activate the corridor, and you see policies light up in both the future land use map and the urban forum that support that. And so when they looked at this site and thought about where to place housing in the city, the comprehensive plan indicates that this should be the office and residential mixed use in the future land use map. It supports heights of up to 7 stories. The urban forum map shows this as a city growth center, a frequent transit area, and the Blue Ridge Road is a transit emphasis corridor, so exactly the type of place where you want more density and mix of uses. And that brought us forward to the Arena Blue Ridge Area Plan, which focuses on putting additional mixed-use developments on this side of Blue Ridge Road, on the Museum of Art side. So our site is just north of the Museum of Art, about a block south of Rex Hospital, sort of catty corner across Blue Ridge Road from the new DHHS headquarters. So you're talking about a lot of people coming through here with limited food options, with limited lunch walking routes, and where you want to put additional living opportunities for folks to not only be able to live, but to be able to patronize that street and really activate the Blue Ridge corridor. So from that policy guidance, it led us to request an NX7 PL, a parking limited conditional use case. And that would be providing the multifamily development with commercial uses on Blue Ridge. The NX was selected because it allows us to provide a variety of commercial uses without the caps that the OX would, which would otherwise be recommended here, and allow us to put those restaurants and personal services and retail uses that the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance and its policies really put forth. The Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance, as you'll note in your staff report, does support this case, and mainly because of that really attention to adding those mix of uses and the parking limited frontage, which allows us to pull that building up closer to Blue Ridge Road and then avoid kind of large surface area parking along the corridor. The 7 stories is to accommodate the 40 feet of grade change as the site slopes from west to east, so left to right on your screen. There's a stormwater, there's an existing kind of riparian buffer along the southwest corner of the site that goes all the way to the southeast corner of the site. So we have a lot of grade change and need that height variation to be able to step down according to the city's rules. So that's why we selected the site and how we baked kind of the overall request. But how we baked the conditions really is much more than just the staff overview, which has been very helpful, but really the community engagement timeline that's set out on the screen and what we heard during those meetings. So we had 3 neighborhood meetings where we mailed notice to 1,000 feet beyond the UDO requirement. We're about 3 football fields away from Meredith Woods, which is an existing residential development. They're our closest residential neighbor. They're further down Hardin. And so once we realized that the city's rules wouldn't get close to touching most of the neighborhood, we reached out to the HOA president. She has a listserv and offered to put notices of each of those meetings on the listserv. Based on those neighborhood meeting notices of 1,000 feet, we had 18 attendees in May, 16 attendees in July. We met with the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance in August with 15 attendees there. That also included the museum and the Montessori school. And the majority of those first 3 meetings were talking about this existing traffic problem as one tries to travel westbound on Hardin Road and make a left turn southbound onto Blue Ridge. So if you're trying to get to any point to the west, RTP, anything out onto 40, it's very difficult to make that turn. You have parents coming in and negotiating that light as they drop their children off every day. So we heard from some of these institutional partners, as well as the Meredith Woods attendees at that neighborhood, that couldn't we please explore a light at Hardin and Blue Ridge, and that could we do something about the traffic calming program that they were already in, but were feeling that it wasn't progressing fast enough, or could we participate in that in some way? And I'll detail some of those requests here in just a second. Based on that, we really prioritized getting this light at Hardin and Blue Ridge because we understood how much of that was a really big public benefit for them, and that it was so close to the Lake Bloom intersection. We didn't think that it was going to be possible, but we were able to convince DOT that they would allow us to place the light there if it warranted, and we added that condition. We came back in the final neighborhood meeting in December with 26 attendees. 24 of those were from the Meredith Woods neighborhood, and explained that we were able to get this light and that we'd added several of the other conditions to address their concerns. We also had an on-site meeting several weeks ago. And when I say we looked at this site in advance to figure out what these concerns were, we also pulled some of the meeting minutes from the Meredith Woods Neighborhood Association and saw that this light was a desire and a concern of theirs even as early as September 2021, when they were saying, what is the possibility of having a traffic light on Hardin and Blue Ridge that's been denied in the past, and can speed mitigation be explored? So it's definitely an issue that we recognize had been predating our case, but going on for some time. And here just shows the location of that light at Blue Ridge and Hardin, where our site is there on the edge, and you can see we're about 3 football fields from where the Meredith Woods neighborhood really begins there at the intersection by the fire station. So this summarizes the transportation concerns and solutions that we pursued throughout the case. The lack of the signal is something that we worked hard on. We're proud to be able to add as a condition. There were mixed concerns about on-street parking. We explored limiting that, and we're told that the city program limiting on-street parking is really where that belongs, because when you have programs that overlap with safety or changing dynamic situations, and you put those in a zoning condition, it's very hard to then go back and change them, right? You'd have to rezone the case, whereas a city program has a little more flexibility, and we're told that that would be supported in the city program, but not as a condition to the case. There's a concern about stormwater management, and we added a condition to treat to the 100-year storm, far exceeding the UDO standard. The desire for bike and pedestrian connections led us to work with transportation and to add the parking limited frontage that was also supported by the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance, request the multi-use path on Blue Ridge with transportation, which we believe we'll be able to do at site plan based on those conversations. To request additional notice, as you'll see on the screen, more certainty in unit count. The envision analysis would otherwise have allowed us to build 650 units on this site and about 400,000 square feet of office, so significantly more traffic than we otherwise were able to do. So we added those caps on of 415 units and up to 20,000 square foot of commercial in order to limit that. We've discussed the traffic calming at length, and for the reasons we'll describe, we're not able to add those as zoning conditions to the case, but we did pursue those and try to add those to try to mitigate the concerns. And so that resulted in the zoning conditions you see on the screen. And I think we've talked a good bit about the others, but the signal is important here. You're not going to see another zoning condition like this because there really hasn't been one in the city of Raleigh in my near memory. And that's because it's very rare for the DOT to be able to say a light will likely warrant to the extent we're comfortable saying you can make that a zoning condition in your case. You still have to meet traffic warrants. We still have to make sure you build out the 415 units in the commercial and that it otherwise will warrant. But it's much more likely that they'll wait until site plan and say, let's kind of see exactly what the program is in place. And as Margaret explained, there still will be a traffic study that comes after and site plan to not only evaluate the warrant analysis, but all the other safety conditions that have been raised by the neighbors. And so this graph really shows how that can really dovetail together with the existing city program and the traffic calming if it stays on schedule in terms of being number 32 on the list. The neighborhood engagement would embark around summer of 2026 with installation in early 2027. Our construction timeline looks at our first CO in that same time the neighborhood engagement's going on, and then the first warrant analysis being all done at the same time. So based on the city approving the zoning case and having the site plan work through the normal channels and the traffic calming program working through the normal channels, that installation could well be in place before we are fully leased and our traffic adds to it, but we're still going to be meeting the warrant for the light. So we're solving both problems, one through the zoning condition and one through the city program. The case is consistent with many of the policies, and I won't go into those at length, but we do have slides to talk about additional questions that might arise and will remain available to do so. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant? All right. You left with 28 seconds. We will put 10 more minutes on the clock, and those who wish to come speak, please come down front. Just keep in mind, I'm aware of at least 2 to 3 speakers, so I gave y'all an extra 2 minutes compared to regular meetings.
I sent in a presentation.
He has a presentation. All right, they're bringing it up.
Great, thank you.
I asked while he's speaking if actually y'all please stay seated.
Yes. All right. Would it be possible to get the extra 28 seconds? Could I add that onto mine? No. That's right. All right. My name is Michael Pajetra. I'm a resident of Meredith Woods since 2007, City of Raleigh since 1988. Thank you for allowing us to address you this afternoon. Really appreciate that. Also want to thank Jamie and Travis. We've had meetings with them and discussed some of the issues here, so appreciate their time. Reached out to the traffic department Tuesday evening. Understand we all have extremely busy schedules, haven't heard back, but hope to engage with them in the future as well. So want to move forward with discussing this. Let's see. Okay, our concerns request that the City of Raleigh Transportation staff re-review the traffic impact analysis and deny or delay a decision due to the following concerns. The TIA underestimates the number of new trips that will travel Hardin Road from Nancy Ann to Myron. TIA estimates 3% of the traffic exiting the site will travel from Nancy Ann down to Myron on Hardin Road. Based on observation, knowledge of the area, and geographic structure of the surrounding roadways and traffic lights, this estimate may be significantly low. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see here, this is the site oriented to the north, and the highlighted area on the right, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, yep. I really want you to pay attention to that 3% that says it's going to go through that intersection and down Hardin towards Myron. We're going to come back to it in a minute. That is a critical point, and I'm going to share with you why it's so critical in just a second. But that is what is estimated through the TIA to travel from the site through that intersection down Hardin. The TIA also predicts 10% of all new trips will travel from the site down Blue Ridge Road to the north, turn right onto Lake Boone Trail, and then travel all the way down. You can see the 10% follow it each section down to the Nancy Ann Lake Boone Trail intersection. That 10% is critical as well. And here's why it's critical. You can see where the site development is, the red block on the bottom left, and Hardin Road as it travels from east to west. One of the issues that we have is just the geographic situation that Hardin Road is in. It runs parallel to Lake Boone Trail and creates an easy cut-through path for all kinds of traffic, including the traffic from the site. The traffic from the site, as it goes down Hardin Road, would easily continue through the Nancy Ann Hardin intersection, down to Myron, and then cut over to Lake Boone Trail. So again, the 3% is of great concern. The 10% is also of great concern because the 10% exiting the site would need to go to one stoplight, if it's warranted, at Hardin and Hardin and Blue Ridge Road, then travel north, hit another stoplight at the intersection of Lake Boone Trail, Blue Ridge Road, a third stoplight in front of Rex Hospital, a fourth stoplight in front of Rex Woods, and then the fifth stoplight at Nancy Ann. Not sure if too many cars, after they realize that, are going to go around 5 stoplights as opposed to coming straight down Hardin Road. So again, the TIA, we have questions as to how accurate it is. It's likely that 10% of the portioned traffic to travel 5 stoplights would instead travel down Hardin. If that assumption is true, then potentially upwards of 35% of the trips could continue on Hardin through the Hardin-Nancy Ann intersection. Drivers traveling to the Beltline would be more likely to travel down Hardin to Myron to avoid traffic lights in an increasingly congested area. If the TIA were expanded to estimate traffic destination and driver behavior, there could be significantly more impact to Hardin Road between Nancy Ann and Myron. This logic is valid for traffic in both directions, from the project and to the project. So not only is it traffic exiting, but it's also traffic coming to the site that could have significant impacts. So how many of us use Google, use our phones to get places? Just about everybody nowadays. If you were to do a Google Maps search, starting from the site, going to the on-ramp to the Beltline, every half-hour increment throughout the day sends you straight down Hardin Road to Myron to the Beltline. That's our concern. And then the opposite's going to occur as well with traffic going the same way. Hardin Road loses approximately 70 feet of elevation in 0.3 miles from Blue Ridge to Nancy Ann, and then loses another 40 feet of elevation in 0.3 miles from Nancy Ann to Myron, which means that even if you don't hit the gas, you're going 45, 50 miles an hour by the time you get down to the Nancy Ann Hardin Road intersection. The slope on both sides of these stretches will allow vehicles to intentionally or inadvertently speed in the 25-mile-an-hour zone. The city should consider the type of project and volume of traffic that the proposed project will generate and deny the rezoning. The 3% I mentioned earlier, this is why it's critically important. We had a conversation with Jamie and Travis just the other day, and if I understood the conversation correctly, Travis explained that part of the TIA is to emphasize for the DOT where the traffic will be the most impact. So they bias it towards traffic going onto Lake Boone Trail and Blue Ridge Road. However, in the documents from the City of Raleigh, it says that the traffic analysis conducted for the site found an additional 5 trips in the AM and 3 trips in the PM are projected, suggesting a relatively small increase in traffic on Hardin Drive. That if you live there, if you drive there, if you just look at the data I just shared with you, coming to that conclusion, it can't be supported. So want to, again, thank you for that. A few other things just want to touch on. Heard the conversation from Jamie regarding the neighborhood's desire for a stoplight there. I will say that there has been conversation about having a stoplight at Nancy Ann and, Hardin Road and Blue Ridge Road. But what I'll say is that that light is a necessity for their project. It is an absolute need for their project. For the neighborhood, it could be something that could be beneficial, but would also have detriments, such as additional traffic coming down the road, knowing that they have a protected left-hand turn. So it's not a magnanimous gesture for our neighborhood. It's a need for their project, and it could have limited benefits and detractions for ours.
There's others that want to speak.
Yes. Randy? All right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Randy Benefield. This is my 29th year living on Hardin Road.
3 minutes.
So when Michael sent that email to me the other day with the 3 to 5 additional trips, I frankly was upset. Initially, I thought maybe that was a typo. But anyway, I woke up about 4 in the morning the other day, and how do I advance this?
Spacebar.
We had. Yeah, we did.
Pause the time.
No? They. Well, there it is. Okay. Yeah, it's up now. So I woke up about 4:30 in the morning, and I was upset. So I printed a map of Wake County. You can't see that super clearly, but it's basically the outline in black there. And giving the developers the complete benefit of the doubt here, and that's assuming that that traffic light does go in. If you look at the blue dot, which is where we are located, which is where the development's going to go. If you want to go to North Raleigh up Creedmoor Road, you're going to make a right-hand turn on Blue Ridge Road, go to Edwards Mill, and that turns into Creedmoor Road. So if you're going to North Raleigh, that's your path. And with the light, if you're going to go to Route 40 west over to Chapel Hill, Durham, what have you, Research Triangle Park, with the traffic light, you can turn left at Blue Ridge Road and go down to Wade Avenue and get onto Route 40, which is not the case now. If you want to go to any place else in Wake County or beyond, you're going to go down Hardin Road to avoid all the traffic lights on Lake Boone Trail to get on the Beltline. If you're going to Six Forks Road, Wake Forest Road, Capitol Boulevard, downtown Raleigh, if you're going to the cities to the east, Knightdale, Wendell, Zebulon, if you're going down to Southern Pines, if you're going to the new VinFest facility that they're building down there, any place else in Wake County, you're going to do what the rest of us do that live on Hardin Road, and you're going to go down Hardin Road, and you're going to go down Myron and get on the Beltline there. This project is on Hardin Road. It is not just part of the Blue Ridge Road corridor. 400 units, conservatively, if we said, okay, there's 415 units, say there's 400 cars, which is, of course, very conservative, and say only 25% of those cars are going any place else in the county except those 2 places that I mentioned. That's 100 car trips a day additional on our stretch of Hardin Road. That is a lot of traffic, and we've already got a problem with that. I've lived there, like I said, almost 29 years. We've had issues with this traffic ever since I've been there. Every single time there's a new development on that stretch of Hardin Road, the traffic has gotten worse. And we're not against development. In fact, what our proposal back to the developers has been, you cut this project in half and make it 200 units, and make sure the stormwater is mitigated, and we will support you 100%. We won't back down on that. We won't keep coming back with additional demands. We cannot support 400 units. We don't know how that could possibly work in our neighborhood. So thank you all, by the way, for taking our phone calls and speaking with us. Really appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Applicant, you had 28 seconds. Anything, do you want to use it, or I can go into, yes? Hold on, go ahead. And can you come to the mic, please?
My name is Tom Turner. I live on Hardin Road. And I attended 2 of the meetings that Parker Poe had. We have more than 132 neighbors that have signed a petition against this proposal. So
You stop it.
regardless of the fact that 27 neighbors went there and gave some input, they didn't really know the impact of it. So 139 neighbors signing a proposal against it is huge, and we probably got about 40 people.
So my
here.
question is, of that 100, does it agree with what the previous speaker said? If it was reduced, that y'all would support it?
It would increase. What would decrease? Oh, yes, we would, the 139 neighbors would, we gave them a proposal on February the 8th. We've yet to hear from them. And we've agreed that the 139 neighbors 140 neighbors would drop, would
Okay.
no more come here and stand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything y'all? Give you some time to respond. I lost track of his time, so don't worry about it.
It's like, I think it was 28 seconds.
Yeah.
Travis can be available to answer questions as needed. I would just like to point out that we had a robust interaction with a lot of these neighbors and more that came to the actual scheduled meetings that we overnoticed. And it's our job to depend on that feedback. I mean, that's what we do in this process, is to listen to what they've said at those meetings, to then go back and explore those things with city transportation, which we've done. Your transportation staff has been amazing in answering a ton of questions and being creative about what can and can't be done. And that's what we've been doing since May of 2023. So I understand that there is a group of neighbors that disagree. They've been able to get a petition. I don't think that discounts the process that's occurred and the real-time feedback we got in those neighborhood meetings, or that those neighbors didn't understand what they were saying when they asked us for a light. So I think we respect the positions that have been shared here today. What we're trying to do is to deliver housing in a way that the city council and the long-term vision for this site has long envisioned. And cutting it to 200 units with what we've already planned for structured parking and a vault to treat the stormwater at 100-year detention will make the apartments twice expensive. I mean, it's as simple as that. And so that's a decision that is very hard to make. But it's not something that we're taking lightly. So I think we're happy to answer any other questions that are raised directly. Otherwise, just give my time back to the committee.
Okay. I have some questions for staff. It may be Will for you, or because it's around the TIA and or whoever does TIAs. You're the lucky person. Help us understand the process of a TIA.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Monique Geint with Transportation, and I help review the traffic impact analyses for the city. So walking you through the process, the applicant team, or Kimley Horn, they did approach us to scope this TIA in coordination with NCDOT. And there are a variety of assumptions that we all approve on and are comfortable with an engineering judgment. Things such as approved adjacent developments, the site distribution, where trips are going away from the site, how they're getting to the site, and when we agree on those assumptions, Kimley Horn, they can do the TIA, and then NCDOT and the city will review that.
Okay. And based upon the review, I guess the applicant's presentation is, and it's in the background, is the same numbers, the 3% going down. And I want to be honest with you all, being a Raleigh native, I never knew of your street until this case came before me. And I drive that way all the time. Now that I know I can avoid stoplights, I still try to take the stoplights, but just for full disclosure. But just trying to understand the numbers, the 10% that could turn, 3% that comes across. You're doing that based upon data and information of normal patterns?
Correct, yes. We look at traffic patterns within the area. I would like to clarify that 10% that was noted turning, I'm gonna make sure I get my bearings correct, but onto Lake Boone Trail and to the interchange. This site has 2 entrances or 2 access points. And so that 10% is not only trips coming from the site access on Hardin, but also those coming from Blue Ridge.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have another question related. It's not the process, but the impact. If they went back and you went back, whoever does it, I guess you, did an analysis again, and it did trigger a drop in level of service, I mean, what would be the practical requirements? I mean, they're already offering a light, so would the impact not just be the light that they're already conditioning? I'm trying to understand what would happen to the developable, to the site if for some reason there was a drop in level of service.
So typically when we see a drop of level of service currently in our guidelines or our policy, is that to get to a point of concerning mitigation, we typically look at like an LOSF, which is failing.
Yeah.
I can refer to the TIA to sort of see where we were currently.
I guess my point is they're offering a light. I think that was in
Right.
one of the conditions. Is there anything that redoing a TIA and taking a more, I guess, strict scrutiny on it would require them to add in addition to a light?
I could only assume, really, possibly if it was a significant drop in level of service, maybe we're looking at changes to the signal timing or providing more storage for turning vehicles, stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm looking again at this in the presentation, the TIA, and I don't see any significant changes based upon the data and information that has been provided. One of the other questions I want to ask is, as far as I noticed the traffic, I guess this is mainly because of the fire station, any type of traffic calming or thing will only be east of that street and nothing in between. So I guess once traffic calming is put in place, based upon your experience, people tend to avoid areas where we've done traffic calming. Is that correct?
Largely, we don't see a major volume difference in before and after. Pre and post projects have about an average 15% drop in vehicle volumes. The eastern half of Hardin Road has been pretty consistently 600 vehicles a day since 2003, whereas the western half is 1,500 to 2,000 pretty consistently.
Okay, just one more thing. Is there anything we could do on Hardin Road to make it less enticing for folks to cut through? We did something on some other cut-through streets. People hate it. They email us all the time, and they seem to avoid it. Like, could we put that on here, and then people wouldn't cut through?
So these are public streets, so we can't restrict access.
No, but we
in
did
that
some with
way.
like weaving. There is some street in District A that we still get emails that they hate whatever we did. So no one likes cutting through there anymore.
Well, I mean, it depends what the people want. I mean,
Could we do what we did here on Harps Mill?
No, because the road's not wide enough.
Okay.
But
So the question I have relates to, I know this TIA focused on this development, and that's great. But if we look at it and we widen our view, we have DHHS just down the street, and that's going to be 5,000 people going there. Does the TIA take that into account?
Yes, that was one of the approved developments that was included.
So with the 5,000 employees coming in day out, plus this 415, that doesn't, what I'm hearing, that doesn't trigger the TIA doesn't trigger the adjustments or whatnot. And that's where that's where I'm confused, because we have 5,000 employees coming in and out. Then we have this that doesn't trigger the, I'm losing my words, but it doesn't trigger the, whatever we're talking about. And then, but in their conditions, they say afterwards, if 6 months, we'll redo it. But if it wasn't triggered with the 5,000 from DHHS, then how is the 415 going to fix that?
Yeah, there you go, Travis.
Hello, Travis Flewitt with Kimley Horn and Associates. The need for traffic signal warrants is generally driven by turns, not by through traffic. So DHHS will certainly add traffic on Blue Ridge Road, but the need for the signal is being driven by turns on and off of Hardin Road, particularly left turns. So for this site, that's what's the people that we expect to leave this site, turn left from Hardin onto Lake Boone, and then or onto Blue Ridge, and then the people on Blue Ridge that are going to turn onto Hardin to come to this site. That's what drives.
Hold on. Can we please keep outbursts and not have them? Can we continue to be respectful as this meeting started off?
So to that, I think to what the residents had presented, the thought that if I am a DHHS employee and I'm trying to get to 440 and I'm driving back home and there's 5,000 employees and they realize I can avoid 6 lights by going down Hardin Road, is that part of your TIA?
No, because we used the DHHS study and applied the volumes from that study to our study. So if they didn't assign traffic going down Hardin Road, we did not assign traffic going down Hardin Road.
But because that's not a main thoroughfare, would it have been assigned down Hardin Road anyway? Wouldn't it have gone down Lake Boone?
It would not have, but we also used background growth to account for some of that.
Okay,
Probably,
thank you.
Possibly not 5,000 employees, but some of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Branch, we're going to lose our stormwater expert here in about 5 minutes. If we'd like to have any questions related there.
Yeah, if you could come down, because I do have a question. In the email from the residents, there's a request for a 500-year stormwater, solution. I don't know if we have one. That's where I want to hear from you. What, like, per our code, per requirements, how far can we go?
So we have had rezoning cases go in the past up to the 100-year like this one does. And the 500-year is the most theoretical estimation we have of any design year storm. So we don't have a lot of good data on it. We don't have 500 years worth of data on stormwater or flooding. So that's really the main purpose. And so that's why most of regulatory issues stop at the 100-year storm. So we've never done a rezoning condition for a 500-year storm, and our code doesn't reference any provisions for 500-year storm for either floodplain or for flooding downstream. So it's always usually the 100-year storm is as high as it goes.
Okay, so even if we had, even if they said we will build for the 500-year storm, it sounds like you wouldn't even have a way to measure it.
There are values out there, but in the engineering community, there's not a lot of confidence in those values because we just don't have the data to support that this is exactly what a 500-year storm is. But there are estimations out there for a 500-year storm. It's just we've never had a rezoning case for it, nor is there any floodplain or flooding regulation that I know of that uses the 500-year storm.
Okay, Christina.
My question isn't about stormwater, though, so I want to make sure, if there's any other ones, please go before me.
Yeah, and I apologize. I have to go to the planning commission meeting at
I
4
get
o'clock.
it.
So.
All right. Yes, sir.
Just if I could hold you for a second, just curious if he could speak to the potential. I'm familiar with a recent development that is planning for 200-year storms back to back, which we've seen in North Carolina over the last 10 years, if that is something that you've seen in development projects.
So we have seen in Raleigh, we have seen a development off of Falls of Noose Road that basically will handle 200-year storms back to back. Because essentially how the stormwater regulations go, when you're treating up to a certain year storm, you have about 2 to 5 days to kind of draw that down. So essentially, if you get them quicker than 5 days, that's where you kind of have that overlap where your system is not drained out ready for the next storm until you get to that 5-day cutoff. The Lifetime Fitness on Falls of Noose Road has two.
It's in a watershed, though, isn't it?
It's in the watershed, and that water is actually going outside the watershed. So that's why they did the back-to-back 100-year storms, because it was actually leaving the watershed it was in, which is not something engineers like to do at all, not to put too fine a point on it, and going to a different watershed that had other drainage issues. So that's why it was prescribed for them to do the 100-year storm back-to-back that they could handle two, basically, if they came on a Monday and a Tuesday back-to-back.
Okay, so that's the only one that, and that's
in Raleigh.
And that's because of that unique circumstance going from one watershed to another watershed.
Correct.
Okay, and this property, there's only one water.
Yeah,
it's not, one is not in a watershed.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's not going to another drainage basin or anything like that. So it's going to where it's going today. It's just, yeah. But they are correct. The back-to-back, it's based on that 2 to 5 day drawdown. So that's, so technically, if you get one within 5 days, it's not going to handle back-to-back on.
And how many acres is Lifetime? Do you remember?
I believe Lifetime Acres was 18 acres.
18 acres. Okay.
I can look it up real quick for you before I leave.
And and this is just under 7.
So that was, sorry, 25.7 acres.
25.7
Yeah, it was
acres.
lifetime.
And, okay, and this is just under 7, so lifetime's almost 3 times
Correct.
the size of this one. Okay, all right, that's helpful.
All right.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
I apologize.
All right, you had a question?
I have to uplift this one. Councilor Harrison wasn't able to be here, but she is watching, and she has a question that for traffic or for transit. She says, how are assumptions made on how traffic flows and where does the data come from? Is it in-person observations or something else?
Just to clarify, the question is, how do we project where traffic from this site is going to go? That's correct?
Yes.
It's based on a number of things. It's based on existing traffic patterns. It's based on judgment about where employment and housing density, so like obviously the residential component of this, where are the jobs, where is the shopping that these people are likely to go to. For the retail component, it's where are the houses that are the people that are going to be coming to and from this development. And so it's a combination of those things, and then coordination with the city and NCDOT. And as Monique said, that is reviewed with staff or city and DOT, and everybody agrees and gets comfortable with it. And then that's what we analyze.
So it sounds like it's a mixture of both in-person observations and data-driven that's coming from different departments.
Yes, and just looking at land uses and land use densities in the surrounding area.
Got it. One other question as I'm talking about the things that are also happening in this area. We have PNC, which was just, we just thankfully kept the hurricanes for 20 years, but with that, we're doing an almost $1 billion development project, which is not going to happen tomorrow. It's over the time. Yep. But this is a road, as people are going into PNC for football games, for hockey games, and all of that, that, again, to this point, if this is an egress to get out, we all know the problems of egress during these games. Was that also a consideration?
We did not look at a game day event for this study.
Okay, thank you.
Question for staff. What type of, because I know you all have secondary, major, main, what type of road is Hardin classified as?
That is a good question. I think from my memory. Okay, Margaret, you can answer that.
Sure. So in the street plan, Hardin Road is designated as a 2-lane undivided avenue.
2-lane undivided avenue, okay.
True, sorry. To clarify, that's between Blue Ridge Road and Nancy Ann Drive.
Okay.
Specifically. Otherwise, it's a local street.
It's a local,
It doesn't have a
where I was
designation.
going. Okay, so it's classified as a local street, okay. That's what I asked. No, Hardin.
That is for Hardin.
That is
So
for Hardin.
between Blue Ridge Road on Hardin and Nancy Ann Drive, that
Right.
section is a 2-lane undivided avenue. From Nancy Ann Drive to Myron Drive on Hardin is a local road. It's not designated in the street plan.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, and this is just to follow up from Councilor Harrison. She's going back to the question about in-person observations or something else. She said, if there was an in-person observation done, when was it done for this case and for how many days, hours, and which days of the week? Where does that data come from?
Traffic counts themselves are done on a typical weekday. That'd be a Tuesday through Thursday in the AM and PM peak hours. The counts are done for one day, but a typical weekday. And then I went out and observed traffic. I couldn't tell you what time of day it was. I've been out there several times. My children used to go to the medical office building, the doctor right across the street from this site. So I've been many, many times over the years. But I couldn't tell you when I was out there particularly for this site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council members? So I'm going to summarize what I've heard today. You know, the applicant placed the condition in for a traffic light based upon feedback from community meetings since May of last year. But that traffic light will only come if this intersection meets certain warrants based upon, one, the site plan that will be set up that will give the actual number of units that are built. Right now, they have a max of 415, but I understand we won't have actual number until site plan. So that's once. Then once the building is built, if at pre-site plan, if at site plan it doesn't meet warrants, post-construction, post-occupancy, when residents are in, there will be another TIA done to see if it meets those warrants. From what I've heard from the community is that regardless of warrants or no warrants, our issue is traffic and the number of units that are there. And you feel reducing the number of units will reduce the traffic coming from this site. And based upon that, and also I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm using layman's terms, nothing governmental. You could care less if there's a traffic light or not. Is that my understanding? Okay. Any other questions? Because I think we're almost, I see the impasse from this committee. Today, again, we're here to listen, to see if there's any path forward. I would warrant more conversation between the two sides to try to see if there's some type of way. And also if the developer, even though the case has a max number of units, if you have a ballpark number, I know that's scary to give out because you have to look at where you're going to place, where you would like to place certain things. If this is approved and move forward, that will impact your numbers as well. Because I know there's a stream that goes through this property that requires certain setbacks and things of that nature. So all of that will impact the placement of the building, the placement of a parking deck, if this is approved by council. I don't know where council stands. The hearing is on the 5th. I don't know if it's going to be, if stormwater might get sent to growth and natural resources, or if the case will be approved, or if the case will be denied, or what may happen. But I would urge more conversation to try to figure out how we can get to the impasse. But do please note, I do have to say there is a process. And I've seen this on a lot of cases where at the 9th hour, something changes. And it makes it very difficult for council members because we have a process in place for a reason, so people know what to expect. So with that being said, if there are no more questions?
So we got to refer it out with no recommendation.
Yeah, we'll have to, yeah.
I also would like to recommend that we ask council to look at the prohibition on the private development for the traffic calming. I think we should recommend that out as, I think we should refer that out.
That's a separate, so we need a motion to recommend out and.
So moved. I move that we recommend this case out with no action, and we also ask the council to direct staff to look at the private development contributing to the traffic calming program.
Okay, is there a second?
I want to make sure that in that recommendation that both cost and the resources provided by the city are evaluated there, because I don't want to just make this about money. It's also about staff resources to be able to build it. So as long as we're on the same page with there, I will second that.
Yes.
Okay, second.
Right. Moved and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. That is all we have before us today. Thank you all for coming out, and we will see you all on March the 5th at 7 p.m.